Thanks for listening to the ArtTactic Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Green. This week, I'm thrilled to be joined by James Cohan, founder of the New York-based gallery, James Cohan. The gallery is currently celebrating its 25th anniversary with a special group exhibition titled All About 25, and I wanted to have James on the podcast to reflect on this incredible milestone. Reaching 25 years as an art gallery is a major achievement in this industry. And I think it presents a unique opportunity to look back at what's changed, what's stayed the same, and what's been learned along the way. I think it's especially fascinating to hear from someone who's not only witnessed the evolution of the art market firsthand, but who's also played a role in shaping it. In our conversation, James shares insights on how the gallery has grown since 1999, what he remembers about the art world at the turn of the century, and how he sees today's market in comparison. We also talk about nurturing artists' careers, navigating changing market cycles, and what advice he has for newer collectors who may be entering a more uncertain environment. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Thanks so much for listening. James, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, and congrats again on this milestone. So if we go back in time a little bit to when you were just starting the gallery, I believe, in 1999, if you recall, what was your original vision for the gallery, and how has that vision really evolved over the past 25 years?
You know, I had worked for other galleries for 17 years until opening my space. And I must have written probably 6 or 7 business plans leading up to that 1999 inaugural exhibition. And in the end, I sort of had no plan when I did finally open up. What I realized was the plan was to just have the best possible artist I could work with. And at that moment, that included the estate of Robert Smithson, Fred Tomaselli, and Bill Viola. And, you know, from there, it was a matter of doing group shows, inviting artists to participate in projects that we were doing. And it was a big work in progress. And I think it was really at that moment that I appreciated the vulnerability that artists experience. And having worked for other people for many years, you don't feel as much like you're on the front line as you do when it's your name on the door. But ultimately, the realization for me was, you know, our name meant nothing, and it was all about who we were exhibiting and what was our roster of artists. And so I'd say the last 25 years has been a work in progress, and every day is a kind of new discovery. And, you know, the kind of essence of it is just, you know, how well have we picked the artists, and how well have the artists grown and evolved within their own body of work.
So one thing I really enjoy on the podcast, and I think our listeners do too, is hearing about the art world during an earlier time, especially before many of them entered it. When you think back to your very first year in business, what stands out most about the art world then and how it compares to today?
The first thing that comes to mind is, you know, there was the very limited internet. You know, I think the big innovation in 99 was that there were printers and scanners so that we could do away with transparencies, and we could make printouts of images to send to clients. Because up until that point of 99, it was all about getting transparencies duplicated and then FedEx to clients. And, you know, everyone was spending thousands of dollars. And, you know, the distinction between whether you were sending a 3x5, a 3x4 transparency or an 8x10. And was just kind of a little bit about, what was the value of the work of art that you were selling, and how much money did you have to allocate towards your reproductions. The world has certainly gotten bigger. The expansion of wealth has brought that many more collectors into the equation. Probably one of the bigger changes is the proliferation of advisors. And in many ways, the disintermediation between the collector and the gallery. And so it's sort of shifted where we now are becoming we have continually become very close with advisors and work directly with them to educate them so that they can then educate their collectors. There's still that joy of working with an individual and building a collection and knowing that they're loyal to, your vision means a lot. And there's great examples of collections in the past, like the Tremaine collection, which was put together in the 60s and the 70s. They were dedicated to working with 3 or 4 galleries. And, the conclusion of the sum total of their collection was just an extraordinarily impressive body of work. And it was really like aligning themselves with particular ideas and particular visions.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And it does in today's age seem a little bit like a foreign concept or something quite rare for a collector to really go in depth where they're collecting maybe just from a few galleries. Certainly collectors resonate with some programs over others, but usually you don't see today that level of depth of collecting from a specific gallery. So over the past 25 years, and you touched on this a little bit already, over the last 25 years, the art world has become much more global and accessible, fueled by social media, art fairs all over the world, different online platforms. They all have played a role in this. Do you see the increased visibility of art in the art world and the art market as a good thing overall, or are there aspects of maybe the old art world that you think we've lost in the process?
Well, I think with the increase, financial capacity of the marketplace, it just gives all of us an opportunity to reach further into the world to find great artists. Working with artists like Elias Sameh from Ethiopia, and working with artists on the West Coast, and working with artists from Kenya, Kaloki Nyami, and working with the States, the Iranian artist Munir Farmian. We can become that much more expansive in our reach to the kind of things that we can present to the public. Ultimately, we're in the education business and we're in the service business. We just happen to sell things from time to time. It's my belief that unlike my father, who always used to say to me, you're not there to convert the natives, you're there to sell Bibles. I would always tell him, in our world, unlike the appliance world or the furniture business, you need to educate. You need to bring people closer to the ideas of the artists. And the better we can do that, and I have to say my staff is extraordinary at that. They're just the amount of intellectual rigor that goes into all the presentations is super, I'm impressed by all of their work. That just makes us a richer resource. And so if anything, I feel like the world has gotten more rigorous and it's gotten more serious. And we understand that, our first priority is to work with museums and to appeal to an educated curatorial class. And if we can do that, then we feel very secure about our choices.
And so over the last 2.5 decades, you've helped launch and significantly grow the careers of many artists. In your experience, Are there certain key ingredients that tend to lead to a successful long-term career for an artist?
There is no silver bullet, as you well know. Life gets in the way. Everyone's got complicated existence on this earth. But I do think that an idea that I remember hearing, I think it was Sigmar Polke was talking about when I had an opportunity to meet him in the late 80s, talking about the space between the work. And, it's what happens not in the work, but between, one example to the next, and because we're outside the world of the masterpiece, and that idea seems to have gone by the wayside, and, the serial production, there's an evolution of ideas that just keeps germinating and evolving into new ideas. So when an artist can move from the first exhibition to the second to the third, they're digging deeper. And when you get to your fifth or sixth exhibition, it should really reflect a kind of evolutionary idea and or an evolution of the idea.
Yeah, I think that's a really great piece of advice. So there's a lot of talk about how the current art market feels slower, more cautious than it has over the last few years. As someone who's guided collectors through both really boom times and maybe quieter periods, what would you say to those who are unsure of how to navigate this moment? Particularly, I think about newer collectors who may not have experienced the ups and downs of the art market.
Ultimately, I think it's using your eyes and not your ears. And it's building a sense of confidence and intentionality as to why you're making these decisions. And it's really looking at the body of work of whichever particular artist, and understanding as best you can how things fit in. There are that many more choices today and it is an extremely complicated process. So I'm always impressed with collectors who have a certain intention, where they have a kind of focus and they have an approach to what their ideas are in terms of building the collection. And while it may deviate from that idea, it's a lens to look through. That becomes really interesting. So I would say intentionality is key. The market will continue to go up and down for eternity. And I think, serious dealers, serious artists, serious collectors, we're here to stay. And, we accommodate for those moments and make shifts in our business. Our brief as dealer is to really represent the interests of the artist first and foremost.
You mentioned the importance of intentionality and having a focus. I often speak with newer collectors, and I think it takes time and really experience to develop that. When we think about a collector and the collector journey, from your perspective, how do you think they get to that point where they do have that intentionality and that focus? And do you actually have any advice for them on how to potentially get there faster?
I think it's the accumulation of all those visits to all the galleries and all the art fairs, and kind of looking at, what is the commonality of your interests and how do those things add up? There's certain collectors that I remember from years ago who liked a certain kind of drawing. They seemed to be interested in process. They seemed interested in the methodology of and the evolution of an idea. And so working drawings became a thing that was very attractive to them. And so they just kind of kept digging in. I do understand that it all takes time, and you have to be patient, and you have to appreciate the fact that the decisions you make today may not be the decisions you would make, in 5 years. But I think that's life itself, and we all learn from that. And I always think collecting is the one kind of allowable narcissistic activity. That, it's my taste, it's what I like, and this is where I was at that moment, psychically, physically, financially, and it allowed me to do that. And that's a mark in time, and so it's a way of tracking your own evolution as a person.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. So before we let you go, tell us a little bit more about the exhibition at your gallery right now, All About 25, which commemorates the 25th anniversary of your gallery. It's on view, I believe, until July 25th. I definitely recommend our listeners visit the next time they're in the city if they haven't already. But tell us about some of the artists participating and some of the themes in the works.
Well, we wanted to celebrate the event, the occasion of our 25th. Trenton Doyle Hancock, wonderful artist from Texas, made a picture using his now archetypal suite of paintings about the exchange, which is his relationship as Trenton Doyle Hancock, the artist, addressing Torpedo Boy, his alter ego. And in the middle of their conversation is a star with a quarter in the center. So there have been a variety of different takes on this subject. One of the more exciting ones is that Byron Kim, who is someone that we've worked with for over a decade and is very well known for his suite of paintings called synecdoche, which are the colors of each painting is, I think, about 8 by 8 inches. And it is a portrait of one skin color. So he's an artist who works with color and how it reflects on meaning, and sociologically as well as psychologically. And this becomes a kind of abstract representation of diversity and the range of who we are in this world, but through a grid of colored panels. So in this instance, Byron came to the gallery and made a portrait of all 25 employees. Conveniently, that fit in. So it's very exciting, and we're hope that everyone comes to visit. And the show will be up through the end of July.
Yeah, it's a really fun and exciting exhibition, and I definitely recommend our visitors check it out when they're next in the city. James, thanks so much again for coming onto the podcast and sharing some of your memories of your experiences over the past 25 years. And congratulations again on the anniversary. What an incredible accomplishment. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. All best.